Well, holy crap, folks. Vladimir Putin is now stepping up the stakes again, discussing staging strategic nuclear weapons in Belarus. This is breaking news. You're going to need a lot more than life insurance, 12 free stocks, and a coupon that's linked down below after this one is said and done. Let's get started. Look, it was just last week that Xi Jinping visited with Putin. They talked about how they were going to create a change that the world has not seen in over 100 years. We didn't think that a week later we would hear about nuclear weapons being moved into Belarus, which, P.S., is right on the border of Poland, which is part of NATO. And remember, an attack on one is an attack on all. But let's get into the details of this. So, this carefully orchestrated statement with Putin and Xi took place as they shook hands in front of cameras and media spectacle, and a lot of people were speculating over, okay, well, did Putin end up negotiating with Xi Jinping? Are we going to see a de-escalation? Well, guess what we got? We got an escalation, not a de-escalation. Now Putin wants to move nuclear weapons, strategic, tactical nuclear weapons, to Belarus. This is a country that, per treaties, non-proliferation treaties, does not currently have nuclear weapons, and this comes after they've deployed, or after Russia has deployed their naval fleet in the Arctic with nuclear weapons. This is something that has not happened since the 1970s Cold War. So think about this. First, we get nuclear weapons moved onto ships in the Arctic. Now we're moving nuclear weapons to Belarus, which again is on the border of Poland. Now, this idea of people downplaying this war between Russia and Ukraine as just a territorial dispute, Mr. Ron DeSantis, is really starting to look incredibly risky and potentially reckless. This situation is escalating more than de-escalating, especially as Russia is seeking to recruit more than 400,000 troops to prepare for Ukraine's, or to counter Ukraine's spring offensive. And sadly, this is eerily similar to the disaster of the Cuban Missile Crisis. I'll give you a quick reminder on this, and let's talk some more details here about what's actually going on in Belarus. So, quick background. The Cuban Missile Crisis occurred in October 1962. It was a 35-day confrontation between, guess whom? Russia and the United States, the then Soviet Republic. Cuba is just 90 miles away from Florida, and the confrontation arose out of the U.S. government making two big moves. Number one, the U.S. government installed Jupiter nuclear missiles, which are medium-range ballistic missiles, highly accurate for 1960s technology, designed to strike China and the Soviet Union, in Italy and Turkey. That is kind of near where they're designed to go. And now it's kind of like we're getting a revisit of that some 61 years later, but now Russia's basically doing it to us. On top of that, then the U.S. government attempted to actually invade Cuba via the famously failed Bay of Pigs invasion on the south coast of Cuba. The attack, by the way, the Bay of Pigs, 1,500 special forces. Some people think it was a small attack. 1,500 special forces were involved in that. 30 planes, B-26 bombers, ships, tanks. But it was a spectacularly failed attempt at overthrowing the then dictator Fidel Castro. And what did it end up doing? Well, it ended up galvanizing support for Fidel Castro, and he ended up becoming a national hero in Cuba. And guess what? U.S. escalations with missiles and this special operation ended up leading to, well, this Cuban Missile Crisis, where then Khrushchev decided to partner with Castro. And what did they do? They decided to install Russian nuclear missiles in Cuba. Then Khrushchev, well, I mean, it's worth noting that now, now we know, we have history on our side. We know what history and what ended up happening. We know that Khrushchev was later the same person who fortunately helped negotiate with the U.S. to reduce Cold War tensions. Cooler heads ended up prevailing. But we narrowly escaped nuclear war once before. And now, instead of Khrushchev, we have Putin. And today's provocations, in fairness, are coming from both sides. It's not great. You're getting both sides provoking nuclear war. You essentially here, hold on, we got to get buckled up. We're coming in for a Jerome Powell landing. Hold on. Tristan, you buckled up? All right, here, you buckle up. Take care of yourself, sir. All right, we're coming in for a smooth landing, I hope. Anyway, now, Today's provocations are coming in from coming basically from both sides, right? We know this already. Russia is armed and supplied by Iran. China's already been supplying lethal weaponry to Russia for many months now. They just recently came out and admitted that. They're also covertly being supplied by Kazakhstan and Turkey. And then on the other side, of course, we've got the United States, Ukraine, and NATO continuing to ramp up tensions rather than de-escalate. The United States, for example, has contributed twice as much as the European Union in supplies, weapons, and direct aid to Ukraine, over twice that of the European Union and NATO. That's crazy. That's why many people are saying this is basically a proxy war between the United States and China. It's essentially our opportunity to weaken Russia without risking American lives, or what people are saying. Times are very different today, though, than they were back then, and it's worth considering those. And I hate using that phrase, this time is different, but this time is different, okay? And it's in a bad way. Back then, the United States had 5,000 nuclear warheads. Russia had just 300. Well, guess what? Today, Russia and the United States together have 90% of the world's nuclear warheads. And guess how those numbers break up? Well, Russia has 5,977 to our 5,428. They have more nuclear warheads than we do. Now, maybe ours are better. Maybe our warheads are better than theirs. But still, numbers-wise, they're kicking our butt. They got about 10% more than we have. Additionally, back in 1962, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, we were actually able to insulate ourselves from a nuclear attack from Cuban missiles by using a naval blockade that JFK helped orchestrate, which is great. In other words, hey, if we see you shoot a missile, we're going to shoot it down from our ships, because we have 90 miles, essentially, of water between Cuba and Miami. Well, maybe not Miami. Southern tip of Florida would be more like Key West. But anyway, today, what do we have? Well, we've got basically nothing between Poland and Belarus. Slightly scary. So the stakes are extremely clear here. Nuclear escalation is ramping up. And where are these weapons going, and what are they for, and why are they being placed? Let's talk about that. But before we talk about that, we have to take as neutral of a possible as a jab at Governor DeSantis. You all know me. I try to be in the middle here. But here's the thing. Governor DeSantis kind of shot himself in the foot last week by making a comment he shouldn't have made, and this is a politically very terrible time to make comments like this, because this is the kind of stuff that follows. What did DeSantis say? DeSantis, perfect example of terrible political timing, told us, well, I don't have a lot of foreign policy experience, by suggesting that this Ukraine-Russia conflict is just a territorial dispute. And what happens right afterwards? Putin visits with Xi Jinping and deploys nuclear weapons on the border of Poland in Belarus. That's not great. If only there had been some hints to help prevent DeSantis from making such a mistake. Like, perhaps, maybe, Vladimir Putin could have made it very clear that he would suspend his participation in the START nuclear arms treaty. Oh wait, that's exactly what he did last month. Last month, he suspended his participation in the New START Treaty, which was a bipartisan agreement between the United States and Russia to reduce and limit strategic offensive weapons, basically a style of nuclear non-proliferation, which is just a fancy way of saying, less nukes, boys and girls. Well, Putin's like, no thanks, I'm done with that crap. START, by the way, replaced SORT, if you've ever heard of that. That was the Treaty of Moscow, which expired back in 2012. But anyway, he walked out of that on February 21st. So oopsie-doopsie, Mr. DeSantis, making some political faux pas here and really highlighting that lack of foreign policy experience. But anyway, motivation here. Why is this happening? Well, specifically, Putin says that his choice to deploy tactical nuclear weapons follows the United Kingdom's disclosure that Britain is sending shells made of depleted uranium to Ukraine. Now, uranium is a very, very thick metal element. And these munitions are not nuclear, despite the word uranium. They are very, very dense, and the reason they're used is because they're very capable of penetrating thick armor or bunkers. And Putin saw this as a threat to his neighbor, Belarus. And so Putin will actually be in control of these nuclear weapons. Some details: there are 10 aircraft presently positioned in Belarus capable of carrying these nuclear weapons from Russia to Belarus. Apparently, starting April 3rd, Putin will start ordering the training of crews to be able to handle these Icelander short-range missiles, strategic nuclear weapons. In the near term, probably little will change, since the storage facilities for these nuclear weapons will actually not be available until probably around July. That's when these storage facilities should be available. It doesn't appear that Chinese discussions, though, with Putin had really any effect in helping reach a compromise. And so I think the impact to us here short term is probably we've got to pay attention more. Little's likely to happen over the next few months, but we are starting to see that escalation of nuclear tensions, and it really follows the escalation of military tensions that we've seen over the entire last year. So I think the impact here is caution. Increased caution, hopefully increased pressure on our politicians to ensure the reduction in this nuclear risk that we're facing. I know many of us care about our stocks, the banking crisis, a recession, but frankly, I care more about my children than numbers in a bank account, and ultimately, I respectfully care for you and your family as well. Nuclear war is not an option, and this is terrible. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.